And a big part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because basketball is fun. I love playing it. It taught me so many more things about life rather than just scoring 2 points or 3 points or whatever. It taught me social skills. It taught me friendship. It taught me communication. It taught me teamwork. It taught me all these things.
He is the former co-host of the No Dunks podcast, and now he is embarking on a basketball journey to play pickup ball in 20 different countries. We have the honor of welcoming Leigh Ellis onto Hoopsology. Leigh, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Great to have you. And one question we always like to lead off with most of our guests. You can take this either direction you would like to, but we're always curious to know either your favorite basketball memory or your first basketball memory. So whichever direction you'd like to take it.
I mean, it pretty much is the same answer. And anyone who has followed me or my career knows that the 1987 All-Star game was a very, very life-changing moment for me because it was the first game of NBA basketball that I was able to watch in its entirety. And of course, the most incredible finish there that, at the time I was a kid, I was about 11 years old, 12 years old, and I was into the WWE at the time, which we all know is fabricated. And when I watched, but great characters, great entertainment, especially for young kids. And then so when I watched the very first All-Star game of all games, not a playoff game, not a regular season game, the ending and the way that it all happened, you honestly couldn't have scripted it any better. So I was just captivated from that moment on. And here I am now 36 years later, and I still enjoy that game. I still enjoy talking about it, thinking about it. And it's just one of those special moments that for me, I didn't realize at the time, but I also have made the reference before. It's a bit like the flux capacitor in Back to the Future. That was the thing that really changed and allowed time travel to happen. Well, Rolando Blackman hitting 2 free throws and extending the game into overtime, and then the West going on to win. Tom Chambers being the MVP in his hometown. He wasn't even selected. He was an injury replacement. And then he gets into the starting 5 because it's in Seattle there. So many of those little things that I often watch as well. What happens if Rolando Blackman misses one of those free throws? Am I sitting here today, or am I, am I just working somewhere else in a bank or something like that, and in a different country? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that was a very, very special moment in my life that I didn't realize quite at the time, of course, how impactful it was going to be. But I look at it now, and I still very, very fond of that game and that moment.
Some very consequential free throws indeed there at the end of that game. And Leigh, I know that you have discussed this memory in the past, so I don't want to keep you on it too long, but what was that like in Australia at that time? This is pre-92 Dream Team. Did you feel like kind of an outcast for enjoying this game so much? Were there other people in it with you?
I mean, I wouldn't say an outcast, but I would certainly say I was the only one who watched it almost, over and over and over again, probably a couple of hundred times. My older brother at the time brought the tape home. Basketball was very big in Sunbury. Everyone loved to play it, but we just couldn't get access. There was no cable TV. There was no internet back then, so we couldn't get access to the NBA. So when this game we finally got, and it had Magic and Larry and Michael and Dr. J and Charles, again, it's like a Royal Rumble to use the wrestling analogy. And then on top of all that, it was like the perfect ending. And so there was no one to really talk to it about with, because no one else had that tape. None of my friends were like, "Oh man, I saw it too last night. That was awesome." This was a cassette, VHS cassette, and as you guys probably know, if somebody had that, and nobody else had it. And I didn't want to share that with any of my friends because I'm like, what happens if they tape over it? What happens if they lose it? Whatever, I don't get it back. So I kind of was in my own world. But I honestly just remember sometimes just putting that in and just watching it again and again and again and picking up another little something. Like there's a moment in that game, Charles Barkley and Mark Aguirre. Barkley kind of throws a little bow at it. And the commentator there, it's Dick's. God, I've forgotten who the commentator. No, Dick Stockton and Tommy Heinsohn, I think, on the call there. And he says, "Wow, there's a lot of beef in that matchup between Barkley and Mark Aguirre." So but anyway, I could talk all day. I still, like I say, I'm more than happy to talk about that game anytime with anybody.
Awesome. Well, I mean, your love for the sport of basketball is well known, and we wanted to ask you just about this latest project. Of course, I mean, obviously, a passion project. Was this something that came to mind, rather recently? Is this something you've been thinking of doing for years? I mean, how did that idea come to fruition to play 20 games of pickup in 20 different countries?
Well, it really came to fruition about 2 years ago when I first got the idea, because we were still in COVID, situations there. No one really knew what was happening. But my wife and
Mm.
I had been vaccinated, and we decided, look, if now that we've been vaccinated, if we can't travel, if we can't sort of get out of our house and do things, we'll never be able to do it. So went over Europe around July with our two sons, and I was in Berlin. It was a Sunday afternoon. We're at this flea market in the name has escaped me now, but it's in the city of Berlin there. And there were these guys playing basketball, and so I was like, oh, this is perfect. I love just turning up to courts and playing. And so I started playing, and my son, who was I guess about 8 years old at the time, he started recording it. I didn't ask him to do it, but he just started recording because he's like, I know Dad will like this if I do it. So now the courts in Germany, they're not very shooter friendly, I'll say. They're built to last. If you think of German engineering and building, these things are built to last decades, so they're really good steel, good tough iron, chain nets and things like that. So my jump shot wasn't all that effective that day. I mean, there weren't many baskets to be scored. So it's not like I was out there lighting it up. But I put those clips up on my Instagram, and I got an incredible response, just way, way more than I was expecting. And people started messaging me and saying, if you're ever in my city, if you're ever in Italy, if you're ever in Germany or France or wherever, come and play. And I didn't sort of think too much of it. And then last year we went traveling again. Traveling is a very, very important part of our life. And I thought, I'm just gonna test something out here. So I put a post up on social media. We'd actually been to Egypt. We went to Cairo and Luxor, and we're coming back via Rome and Barcelona. And I didn't want to play in Rome because I knew it was going to be, well, I say I didn't want to play. It was going to be so crowded there. I thought, I'll go to Florence and I'll play there. So I put a post up on my Instagram stories, and I said, I'm going to be in Florence on this day. If anyone's around for a game, let me know. Now, this story had more responses than any other story I've ever posted. But the funny thing was, no one from Florence said, "Oh, I'm in Florence, come and play with me." But people from honestly all over the world, Japan and New Zealand, America, people saying, "Oh, come out and play here," and I was like, "This is wild," but it's not I'm not looking for this. I'm looking for Florence in two or three nights' time here. Anyway, so that didn't happen in Florence, but I did get someone who said, "If you're in Barcelona, let me know." And we were actually going to Barcelona a few nights later. And so I messaged him back and I said, "Yep, I'm going to be there. So can you get a game going?" And I think he was a little bit surprised because he was like, "Oh, yeah, we had our run the other night. I'll see if I can get some guys together and we'll get another run going." And so we did. And again, I put those clips up on my Instagram, and I got this, just a really, really convincing response that I was like, I wonder if I could do this. If I could just take people up in their offers and go around the world and play basketball. Now, so I discussed it with my wife, and she's like, you got to try these things. You got to give these things a chance, because they're not going to come to you. No one's going to knock on your door and say, "Hey, we've got this idea and we think you're perfect for it. It's all planned, it's all funded, it's all prepared, it's all ready to go." You just have to say yes. You have to sort of shake things up yourself. And so I discussed it with my wife, and I said, "Well, let me give this a shot." And so I left the starters, no dunks crews there after 11 years, and I decided to give it a chance. And here I am now 6 months later, and I've been to 9 countries, and I've got 10 coming up in about a month. I've got another one lined up that I'll be playing at. And it's been an unbelievable challenge, a really, really exciting, exhilarating experience that I'm learning so much about myself. I'm learning so much about being my own businessman. I use the term businessman rather loosely there because I haven't yet been able to turn this into a money spinner. But again, these things take time, so you have to go out there and you have to sort of keep working on things and keep learning about how to compile the content and make it into a format that somebody would be able to come aboard, produce and edit and put it all together. So that's the challenge I'm facing right now. But again, I didn't do this. I didn't take on this challenge to be like, well, if it's not making money within 6 months, I'm out. It's a bit more of a long-term play in that sense. And as I say, it's evolving, it's growing, and I feel like I'm getting more of an understanding of what I need to do as I go. And that's just the process of anything when it comes to learning. You think about, you don't go to school for 1 year. School takes 10, 12 years. And then you often do further education after that to become specialized in the skill. So I'm at that stage right now where I'm learning, trying to understand so many different aspects of what I'm trying to do. But ultimately, I do believe in the vision I have, and I hope that one day it does come to fruition in the sense that it's a streaming series on one of the platforms.
So, in the 9 countries that you've experienced so far, I'm very curious when you go to these pickup games, how is the vibe compared to America? Because during COVID, I got really addicted to just seeing these pickup games, and they're mostly aggressive. Like, they're not friendly in terms of these pickup games. So, I'm wondering internationally, is that different in terms of the vibe there? What did you experience this entering those courts?
A very interesting question. I would say the vibe has always, it's like a party. Now, I don't want to sort of pat myself on the back too much, but when people know I'm coming and I organize these runs, they're very, very excited. And people come out, and people have brought me bananas and coffee and some grandmother's snack with a recipe that's like over 100 years old. This fella in Athens brought out. So people are coming knowing that, listen, it's about having fun and playing basketball. There's no one keeping score. There's no one recording stats. I mean, I see all this up on my social channels, but it's certainly not about winning or losing. It's about coming together and meeting people who, some people have followed me through my entire career. They know things about me that I've completely forgotten. And so when I say I'm coming to your city to play basketball, let's play basketball, I don't expect anyone to come out there going like, all right, we got to make this the best game we've ever seen. It's about playing to enjoy ourselves. And the rules are slightly different depending on where you go. In the Balkans, for example, where I began the journey, the very first run in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, Luka Doncic's court there, it was probably 15, 20 guys turned up. And so I just assumed, all right, well, let's play 5-on-5 full court. Nobody plays 5-on-5 full court, especially not in Slovenia. It's all 3-on-3 half court stuff. So when I said that, I was kind of like, I was then the weirdo. I was the basketball weirdo. Like, who plays 5-on-5? So anyway, we ended up playing 5-on-5. But I wanted to do that because we had so many people there. And my one of the strongest things about this whole trip is that if you turn up, I want you to be able to play. I don't want anyone to turn up and go, I can't get on the court. If there's 50 people there, I promise everyone will get at least a couple of runs in, because that's what it's all. If people can make the effort come out, I certainly want to be involved. So that was very, very interesting, the Balkans. However, in Africa, where I just came back from, it was pretty much, there was a lot of 5-on-5 full court stuff. So, and even things like make it, take it doesn't always apply. Sometimes it's like, if you make it, it's the other team gets the ball back, as in normal basketball. And then, so you have to learn those little tweaks along the way. But at the end of the day, they're nothing that you can't figure out. It's just different areas have different rules. But, as far as what I will say is different from playing pickup basketball in America here, there's a lot more ISO basketball in the United States. There's a lot more like one-on-one stuff. So when you are playing 5-on-5 full court, sometimes you can feel a little bit left out because, guys, they get into the little pissing contest. If someone scores, like, I got to score on him, I got to score on him. And it goes back and forth. Whereas, I will say the Balkan style of 3-on-3 is much better for inclusion, because you are almost involved on almost every possession, both defensively and offensively. You've got to be paying attention on defense. So that's the biggest change. And I would say that is, I would honestly say I think 3-on-3 probably is a better format for pickup basketball. It just keeps people involved. Whereas, as I say, sometimes with 5-on-5, if you're up to 11, there are games where you're like, I think I've got 3 touches and that was it in this game, because that's just the way it goes sometimes.
So that's very interesting, your observation about 3-on-3, just because we interviewed Kyle Montgomery, who's the play-by-play announcer for 3-on-3 internationally. And I noticed that USA usually struggles and the international countries usually dominate, at least with the men. I just want to ask you, which country surprised you in terms of their love for basketball? I think as Americans, we get a very arrogant attitude in terms of the game, usually belonging to America, whereas that's not the case. It's a global game for everyone. But which countries surprised you in terms of just how much they love the game, and what's your impressions?
I mean, it's probably a bit of a boring answer, but everywhere I've gone, the passion for basketball has been intense. Like, and I mean, like, people coming out in Africa, where again I just came from, it was blazing heat, like 90 degrees Fahrenheit at least at 11 o'clock in the morning. I thought, and I've got the sunscreen on, I'm drinking water, got a hat, I've got my sunglasses, and I'm like, oh my god, this is too hot. And people are just banging up and down non-stop for hours on end playing basketball. And so that to me, it just shows that basketball is a global game, no question about that. Boys, girls, men, women, everyone loves playing this game. And I guess if you're just used to those conditions where it's super hot like that, then that's just normal. That's just the way that basketball is played. But I will say, I mean, again, the very first stop was in Ljubljana in Slovenia, and the standard was so high. The standard was so good, and I think I got 2 shots, and I made one, and that was it. Now, this wasn't because people weren't passing it to me. It was because, like, oh my, that ball is zipping around so much. People are finding themselves open underneath, so they're scoring, and then so you really have to sort of adapt to the way that they play. And I remember as well on the defensive end, I was like, all right, where's my man? And he's over in the corner, and then he's over the other side, and then he's back. And something you just don't really do playing American 5-on-5, because you kind of pick up your man and then you kind of drop back into a zone. It's pretty loose. But in the Balkans, it's like, if you're not playing defense and you're paying attention, you're going to get scored on. So it's sort of then you focus a whole lot more on, like, I don't want to be that jerk who's like, oh, this guy doesn't play defense. You start hustling on the defensive end, because also you go what it's like. If you have a regular run and someone brings a friend along and that friend just starts jacking up shots as soon as they're on the court, everyone's like, who's this guy? So it was the opposite in that sense for me in Slovenia, where I was like, I don't want these guys to be thinking like, oh man, this guy doesn't play defense. So I had to get out there and work hard and earn it. And then afterwards we went and had a few beers, and that camaraderie is it brings people together, because like we just had a great game. Again, no one's worrying about the scoring or who won or who lost. It's like, let's play, let's have fun, and let's go and have a couple of beers.
I have to ask, do you think that, soccer, or football as it's known everywhere else, has an influence on kind of the less ISO ball feel that we might see more often on courts in America? I mean, do you think that's kind of ingrained, like that, I guess, strategy of just moving the ball more like that and creating better positioning?
Well, probably. I mean, I think if you think of the best European players that we've seen in the NBA, Manu's technically, of course, Argentinian, but played in Italy, the Gasol brothers, Boris Diaw, Jokic, Doncic right now, Vlad Divac, Stojakovic, all those guys, if you think about them, not really any of them were the super muscly, athletic type of guy, but instead really smart, high IQ basketball players. So, and also team first guys. I mean, I think Manu Ginobili probably sums that up better than anybody, that he could have earned more money, could have had a bigger role, but he was happy in the end becoming a 6-man for the San Antonio Spurs. That was the best role for him at the time, and it worked. And so I just think that maybe that basketball culture that they're brought up with in Europe is a lot more focused on team basketball. I mean, if you think of Nikola Jokic right now and Doncic, I mean, Jokic, some of the passes he makes, I mean, his teammates don't even know they're coming. There are times you see Aaron Gordon standing in the corner on the other side of the court, and then all of a sudden the ball is like in his hands. He's like, oh, I got to shoot this. So I think it's probably more just and again, back to guys like Vladi. I mean, Vladi apparently used to smoke still while he played in the NBA. So it wasn't like they were super fit athletes and guys who you could see. I don't think Marc Gasol's ever lifted away. I don't think he's ever done a bicep curl in his life, but incredibly talented, smart player, defensive player of the year, won the championship there with the Raptors. Just understood his role, and I think it's probably more that basketball culture rather than football necessarily, because you see it in so many of the European players that they really understand how to pass and move. And again, I think probably that starts by playing 3-on-3 when you're a younger player, and you realize like you've got to pass and cut and screen and be ready to shoot. You've also got to be soft around the rim. You've got to have good handles. You've got to have all these skills, not necessarily one that you are super good at. Just be very, very good at a lot of them and understand your role, how to be given.
So, Leigh, I want to ask you, you've been involved in the basketball creator space, just with your journey, just starting out with the Basketball Jones. Matt and I, just huge fans. I remember Matt just telling me about the Basketball Jones just a long time ago when we were in college, to where we are now. And you've just seen it evolve. And I'm just thinking of your journey, and compared to other sports, we don't see different facets of the sport covered. With hoops, sneaker culture is covered. With NBA Top Shot, just of course, mainstream storylines. What you're doing, we interviewed somebody who just covered courts all over the world. He takes pictures of this basketball courts all over the globe. And I'm just wondering yourself, what do you think is the state of basketball media now, as you've seen it evolve over time? Do you think it's in a good place compared to other sports, or do you see some things that might be concerning, or some things that might be uplifting, some things that you're seeing in the basketball space that you don't see in other sports?
Very, very good question. I think it probably coincides with how social media has changed as well, because basketball Twitter 10 years ago was the greatest place to be at night. We would all sort of sit there watching the game, and then you would see funny quotes and comments and memes and things like that. And you didn't want to miss out on anything. You were like, oh man, Twitter's awesome tonight. But I think with Twitter and even, Facebook and Instagram, they've all gone from being like really fun, inclusive, engaging platforms to, kind of a pool. And I think, especially in the basketball media, there's a real feeling of people are like, I'm the voice and everyone else is stupid if they disagree with my opinion. And that then just becomes kind of toxic. And so, I basketball for me, and a big part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because basketball is fun. I love playing it. It taught me so many more things about life rather than just scoring 2 points or 3 points or whatever. It taught me social skills. It taught me friendship. It taught me communication. It taught me teamwork. It taught me all these things that the basketball was the bridge for, all these things. Because again, growing up, when I would go to the basketball stadium to play, that's where my friends were from school. That's where I met girls as well, like as you started growing up. And so it was very much a place where, you grew up and you learned, but ultimately you were still playing and having fun. And I think on social media, basketball's gotten a little bit away from that now, where it's like I say, people, no one, if you get something wrong, you make a prediction wrong. And I've made a million predictions that I've gotten wrong, and I've made a few that I've gotten right. But when people, if they say something and they get it wrong, or it's a bad take, that they're a hot take and all that sort of stuff, then it just becomes a fist fight, it seems like, and people start jumping on each other and piling on each other. And it's like, that's not what it should be. Twitter should be fun, because ultimately it allows you to communicate with anybody, in the world, if people respond to your tweets. And that's what made it so cool at the start. But now it also feels like, you can't post a joke anymore without somebody taking it seriously and then trying to, twist your words and make out as if you're saying something else, and you're attacking somebody or you're against something. And so that part of social media and basketball is included in that. But I think it is in the other sports as well, because I do see other people sort of talking about the impact that social media has had on their game, and it just sort of leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. So I hope we can get back to something like that, but I'm to be honest, I'm losing a bit of faith because I'm not sure. It's one of those things. Once you get down that path, it's very hard now to turn around. There's so much, again, like division on. So, you are, if you don't say which side you're on, then you're sort of pushed into one side by the other side, and then it becomes again another battle that nobody wants to be a part of that. But basketball itself, I still love the game. I mean, I didn't leave covering it from the media because I didn't love the game anymore. I didn't like it anymore. But I wanted to sort of get back to enjoyment of the game where it all started for me, and that was playing and meeting people and having fun. And so I definitely feel like I've almost, taken off a coat where I've like, oh, I don't feel that. I don't feel hostility. You mentioned that question you asked me before. I don't go to a court and people are trying to fight over a meaningless game of pickup basketball. People are there to have fun for 2 or 3 hours, however long we're running. And that feels awesome. And it feels kind of like what basketball used to be like for me as a kid, and kind of what basketball Twitter was until, 5-6 years ago when it started to go down the drain.
No, that completely makes sense, and I think that's what with Matt and I, that's the purpose of our podcast is just the love of the game. I mean, so many times you hear all these storylines, which we talk about, but what is the core? Why do they love basketball? Why does LeBron love the game? Why are these figures that dedicate their lives? What's the origin of that? Why do they love it? So I totally respect your journey and just uncovering that all over the world, because I think a lot of this major figures in a game of basketball lose sight of that. It's a lot of just like hot takes and just like I don't know what's in the moment and not really enjoying the game itself. And I think that's a shame. And hopefully creators like yourself continue just to bring that light, because that's why we love it. That's why we're just obsessed with it. There's so many different aspects of it. Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, like you say there, I think people actually hate it. They hate sort of basketball, and you see it like when I remember when the play-in tournament first came about through COVID. And this sucks. I hate it. And it's like, well, it's okay to try things. It's okay to change things and mix things up. And I know we're getting the play-in tournament. I believe it's like maybe it's next season or the one after. Anyway, it's coming for sure at some point. And even people are saying, this sucks, this sucks. And look, maybe it will suck. Who knows? But I'm more than happy that the league is trying things, because I think it's really important to keep that attitude of like, just because things have been a certain way doesn't mean that's the only way they can be going forward. And it doesn't mean that's the best or the right way. You're only going to find out by saying, hey, why don't we try something different here? Things like the 4-point line. Well, just try for 3 seasons. Just give it a shot. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work, we can change it back. It's not the end of the world, Like, I think it's important to at least have that open mind where it's okay if we change the game, change the format a little bit. There's been things over the years that have been tweaked a little bit. Remember, hacker was a big thing there for a while. Like, okay, they changed the rule to try to cut that out. Well, let's maybe try something else as well here, just to see if we can get people enjoying the game again, because it feels like people, we need change, we need things to happen. But then when things do change, people are like, we got to go back to the way it was. So I think it's really important to understand that it is just a game. At the end of the day, it's entertainment and it's fun. And we all want to win. Of course, everyone wants their team to win and be the champion. But you can still get enjoyment out of just following and watching the game. The only, you can't look at the championship as the only metric to determine, okay, I love, this was a good season, this was a successful season. There's so much more stuff that, we should celebrate, enjoy about just playing the game and having fun.
Totally agree. Leigh, great to have you on the show. Please let our listeners and viewers know where they can follow you, where they can find you on social media, and of course, the project you're working on, and anything else you'd like our listeners to know.
Well, you can see I've got the shirt here, the pickup tour shirt. You can go to Breaking Tea and grab one of those if you want to support the cause. Greatly appreciated. And I'm very lucky that I got onto Instagram and Twitter right at the start. So both my handles are just my name, Leigh Ellis, Leighellis. On YouTube, it's the same. It's Leigh Ellis 76. That's my YouTube channel. Facebook, I don't know, to be honest, what my handle is, because I think multiple people can have the same handle. So just find me on Facebook, and I'm on there as well. I'm not that active on that. TikTok and Facebook, I'm not super active on. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be following. I have got a website under construction as well, so it's coming. It's not going to be ready still for a few weeks here, but I'm excited with a few things that I'm working on. I've got one really, really exciting prospect as well that I can't reveal the details about just yet, but hopefully I'll have some news about that very soon. So yeah, I everybody who supported this journey, you guys included, for having me on your show here, I truly appreciate it. It means so much that people are out there following along, supporting me, and connecting with what I'm trying to do as far as celebrate the game and have fun, because ultimately that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Really respect what you're doing, and we are 100% cheering you on. Hope to see you on a streaming platform or wherever very soon as well. So best of luck with everything, and thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.